the road on a road trip in India through Kerala, Karnataka, and Goa. And we are taking our Ayurvedic lifestyle on the road. I hope you'll follow us and get some interesting information from our vlog. See you soon! So can you tell me a little bit about the science of how you pack the bike?
So we want to make sure all the bags are fit enough, not to hang around here and there. So we need to make sure it's like tight while we're riding the bumpy roads, and sometimes we going with the bad roads. So if the bags are not tight enough, it can be fall off from the bike. So we have 4 bags. So the main bag I tied with 6 ropes, like we call bungee cables, and we have a side saddle bags. So we secure it with the 2 bungee cables. So because of the road condition, we don't know what kind of roads are there. So to make sure that everything is be tight, so then we can hit the road.
And is this something that you are doing every time you get on and off the bike? How often do you do it?
Every time when we stop to stay overnight, we should take out all our stuff to the place we stay. So we don't put our personal things on the bike. So because we don't know what kind of places we are being. So then when we back to the road, when we go in our next destination, so we put our bags on and tie it again.
And so far, how has the bike been performing for you on the road?
The bike is perfect, so it's doing really good job. I'm so surprised, and it's not making me uncomfortable, and it's really comfortable riding, and you don't feel like it's quite heavy machine, so it's really good.
Has there been any roads that you enjoyed the most so far?
It's got a few roads actually, especially like tiger conservation, like that forest. So we ride more than half an hour through the jungle, like nothing going on in the road, just the road. So all surrounded by your trees and wild animals, like especially birds. So that is enjoyable ride.
All right, well, I wish you to have more pleasurable rides and roads like that. And of course, if you get those roads, I get to enjoy them sitting right behind you.
Thanks, and I hope we will have more enjoyed rides. We will get soon. Thank you.
For a short interview with our main rider-in-chief on this trip through Kerala, Karnataka and Goa. And we are now... I won. We are now in the Karnataka state, and we have been exploring Hampi for the past 3 days. And we are about 1/3 into our trip.
Yes, we are in 1/3 and totally it's 15 days. We have been now in India.
So yeah, for 1.5 month journey, we've covered now 15 days. Initially arriving from Colombo, Sri Lanka into Kochi.
On 10th.
On the 10th of April. So today we would like to focus on a topic that we call the psychology of the road. And what we want to address are some of the practical aspects of preparing for a long journey and a road trip like this. And at the same time to kind of talk about some of the lesser visible and more psychological issues that may come up during a trip like this. And I'll start with some questions, and I'd like to see how Kasun feels about these questions and what he might have to share with us today. Okay, so I'll start with my question number 1. Before you had decided to go on this trip, have you had experience on a long journey on a motorcycle before?
So the question, the short answer if I give, no. But I have been riding some short rides, for example 2 days, 3 days in Sri Lanka, and it's not this much long. So this is a challenge for me also, and at the same time it's very good experience.
And would you say that there is some similarity between the roads that you are covering here, and as well as the landscapes, the conditions of the roads, to the ones that you are familiar with in Sri Lanka, let's say?
Yeah, it's pretty, I can say like 95% same. Same kind of roads and people and the conditions of the roads. But in the beginning I did so much research before I start the journey especially about the road conditions and the rules and how the weather and heat and other things like that, and technical things in the bike also. So actually we started in Kochi. It's so similar to Sri Lanka, so when I'm comparing with exact moments with them places like the roads and people and shows and everything is quite similar. And as we like traveling place to place, like we are going north slowly, so I can see now small difference from the people and the road conditions. So it is like we have a time. I have a time to adjust the situation and adapt to the situation. So actually, it's really nice way they will start the trip from the beginning.
So you're saying that you had a kind of smooth transition from the familiar type roads and a familiar cultural environment and maybe even climate, we can say, of Kerala, similar to the climate of Sri Lanka. And then as we made our way into the drier areas of the Karnataka state, and as the conditions got a little bit harsher, you had some time to adjust to being on the road.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So I'd like to ask you, what was the reason that you chose Royal Enfield as the brand of the motorcycle that you decided to do this long trip through the 3 states of India?
Actually, it quite like classic bike, and it's had a repetition since long time, since in the long time, and comfortable riding, and I've seen some research, and probably this is the best one that I can come up with, and we decide together that which bike will be the one we buy.
And would you say it was a good decision? Is it a good
Absolutely,
bike
no
for
doubt
the long
about it.
rides?
Yes, no doubt, and it's so comfortable. And we did the test riding in Sri Lanka to be familiar, and it's absolutely the best decisions we did.
So should we do a coffee cheers to that?
Yes or not? Cheers.
We're having our Wayanad bought coffee from a 100-year-old plantation where we met the owner who's producing and roasting the beans. And so we're enjoying that coffee throughout our trip that we're able to prepare for ourselves as we go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the preparation for this trip. Because this journey is really about us taking our holistic lifestyle on the road, we know that preparation is an important step in any type of approach to therapy or even just generally in lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask you, for this journey, how much preparation did you do in advance? Did you plan all the stops, and did you plan all the material objects that you needed to bring with you in advance? Or how much of it did you just spontaneously decide last minute?
Yeah, basically we start when we plan in this trip. So we don't have proper equipment much, but we have some, but not much for this long trip. So why when we go in like slowly one by one, then we make a list, and we need this kind of essential thing like jacket, gloves, then the shoes, something like that.
Sunglasses.
Yeah. So we start collecting these things with the time. Then some things that we couldn't find in Sri Lanka, so we decide to, once we in Kochi, so we will find, for example, like gloves. I couldn't find proper gloves to the ride because it more than 2,000, 3,000 like kilometers to have a ride. So then once we in Kochi, so we could find the good one. So preparation is the main thing. If we going a big road trip like this, physically and mentally.
Right.
That's very true. And how about the itinerary? Did you have a fixed itinerary when you planned out the trip, or are you changing your location and deciding sort of last minute where to go?
So when we talking about this trip, so we have a like some sort of picture, general idea about where to go. For example, we both agreed we need to go Goa and Hampi, so we thought about like that. But we didn't have that specific locations that we go this time and go this place and this place like that. So we laid down all the things on the table. So we start like properly planned, like so we will stop this place on this time, this place. But we didn't. Then we have all the idea and all the like big picture in our mind. So will be the plan. But we didn't fix it with us. For example, we didn't book the hotels in advance. We don't know what's happening on the road. It can be broken, so one day can be delayed and something like that. So when we thought together, we will decide those things on the road with the condition.
Very good. So basically you do have a kind of general plan where you are working towards certain locations, but you're not necessarily restricting yourself by making bookings and fixing yourself to a particular rhythm. You're giving yourself some flexibility as to how you move forward. And how about the duration of the rides? How did you decide? Are you going to ride for a certain amount of time or for a certain amount of kilometers? How did you plan that?
Yeah, so that's a good question also, because this will be the main points when we highlighted
and criteria.
When we go into long trips. So when we deciding to go, so we thought like first 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, we will stop in the beginning to used to the conditions. So used to with the bike and engage with the bike. So how the bike is working, how the conditions are, how the roads are, like how the people acting, reacting, how the roads are. So those things will be new for us. So first week, 2 weeks are now the 15 days. So it means we can go a bit far. So actually we start tomorrow. We start our first 200 kilometer. So as I explained, you might understand that we start from the beginning, short destination for 100 kilometers, then 150 kilometers, something like that. And it's good for us, then we can take a break and we have enough rest for next day to ride fresh and with good condition and with the proper idea what we're doing with the plan and where we're going.
Right.
So when we going, so this is the plan. When we going, when the days will go high, like 20
longer.
20 days, something like that. So we start stretching our route for 200, 250 per day, something like that.
Right, so because originally when we planned this trip, we knew that we were not just deciding to do a motorcycle journey and it's just about riding and about sort of the thrill of the rides, although we are enjoying that and probably almost half of our day is dedicated to that type of adventure. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we pace ourselves so that we can enjoy every day with some pleasurable stops and that we can maybe do some sightseeing on the way, even if that means just stopping for a short viewpoint or for a waterfall on the roadside. And so in that way it has been a very nicely balanced trip so far. And
so we have some that short stops that that's why we decided, that's why I say we don't stick with our must do plan. So like what the condition, we adapting and adjusting. Like if we see something nice waterfall or something, a beautiful forest or something like that. We stop there and we take some break and drink some water, and we start engaging with the people, and we start talking with the people, and we
Or elephants.
yeah, elephants, and we saw some nice elephants. Yeah.
So that way we also allow for some things to happen that we would have never expected
Absolutely.
or could never have planned for. That's great. So I wanted to mention that today we are filming this interview on a rather special day, and on the 25th of April 4 years ago we actually celebrated our wedding. So it is a wedding anniversary special that we are sharing with you, and in a way this trip just happened to include this special date for us, and we are enjoying our time in a very nice, lovely villa here in Hampi. So I would like to move a little bit into the kind of psychological aspects of a journey that we are doing, because being that it is a long journey in and of itself, it certainly demands a lot of patience and a lot of preparation, and it kind of asks you to be, I guess, a bit more balanced in your approach, especially when we are changing the location almost every night, which means our hotel conditions are changing, even though we try to, of course, make sure we have all the basics in our rooms, but sometimes the basics are not there as per expectation and as per the listing of the hotel, which is also part of this type of experience, and kind of dealing with our expectations, as well as dealing with people who are part of our journey, even though they may not have signed up to be part of our journey, but they end up being part of our journey, right? So let me actually ask you in this way: have you had any special encounters so far on the road with people who have come to your help in unexpected ways?
I know what you're asking, the exact incident. Once we in the road, that something I trusted about the bike. So because I trust someone's word, so based on that, I trusted him and I trusted the bike.
What was exactly the thing that you trusted?
Exact things means normally the bikes is have to indicate when the fuel is not enough. So you have to indicate. So after the indication is you see the indication, then you go the closest pump, petrol, shell or something. You go and fill the tank. So this time the indication is not there, but I thought it will indicate. But what happened is we end up with in nowhere and middle of like jungle, something like that, very
Just
dry.
Back road, yeah.
When I see my map, like for head like 20 kilometers. For if you go back and we pass the closest town 15 kilometers. So we are in the middle. Stop. I mean, our bike suddenly stopped because of no fuel. So that is something I expected. My expectation is I trust something that I expect. Okay, it's gonna be okay. But what I learned from it, so you have to be you have to be so patient and be alert. Make sure that everything is.
And make sure that you don't depend on mechanics
Yes.
of a bike, but you use your own intelligence, and and basically if we had really not trusted the issues with the bike, right, which actually this really was the only issue we have run into with the bike, is that the indicator on the fuel consumption is not working. But if we had not really just put all our trust into that mechanics, we could have pretty much calculated by that time we would have probably
actually
been running out
it can
of
be
fuel.
not a big thing.
Right.
It will be big thing if we didn't find that person on the road. So within a few minutes I knew the bike stopped, and within a few minutes there's a guy came, so we explained the things and he said, okay, we'll help you. And he came with his own bike and he went to the nearest place, and I think the small shop they offering this for the locals. The bike, he came up with 1 liter of the petrol, so actually it's kind of like angel, we can say. So
God
he saved
sent.
us. He saved us in that moment, and we didn't spend more than 20 minutes on that place. In
It's
that
true.
moment.
It was pretty hot. The sun was up. We were in the middle of a road with not much trees, and we did find a little bit of shade where we could go and hide while we waited for the man to return. But the bike was just in the sun, and it's a heavy bike, and it's not a bike that you can roll into town. So if you're out of fuel, you're out of fuel, and you really don't have much options. But I also wanted to say that I mentioned it to you when this happened, that about 5 minutes or maybe maximum 10 minutes before we stopped and ran out of fuel, a thought came to my mind.
That's true.
Just kind of like like an entertainment thought. I was just entertaining an idea. I thought, what if we ever just ran out of fuel and the bike stopped in the middle of nowhere? And when it actually happened, almost 5 minutes later, I understood that this was not just a random thought. That
you should next time you should tell me your thought.
if I have thoughts, or actually you should make sure your thoughts are at least 30 minutes ahead of time.
Before you should mention the person.
Yeah, so it means I still have to train my intuition to alert me well in advance. Exactly. So, and in addition, the person who helped us, when he returned, and of course we paid him for the fuel that he had gone to fetch for us, but we wanted to give him just a little bit of extra, obviously, for his effort. And he just refused. And we insisted, we really, please take, please, we want to thank you, but he absolutely refused to take. And from that, I understood something for myself, which was, if I do an act out of pure goodness of my heart, and I see someone is struggling and I see that someone is in need and I can help, I'm doing it because just the act of it is sort of creating a positive experience for me and the other person, and that exchange without the money being involved is in many ways more powerful. Although that doesn't mean that someone shouldn't be thanked, and maybe monetarily, for their act of goodness, but ultimately if the person has a very strong commitment to simply doing something good for another person, and it may be a small act, but it mattered so much to us because it saved us 2 hours
Absolutely.
sitting in the sun in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere. It just made me recognize what an incredible person that person chose to be in that moment. And we don't know whether he's like that in every moment in his life, but certainly for us it had an enormous impact, and that created a
Absolutely.
huge difference for us that day. So when it comes to these kind of situations and that kind of work their way into a trip like this, would you say that you started this journey with some level of expectation of special experiences, and have your expectation been met up to now, or have you had more disappointing experiences, or have the experiences kind of gone beyond your expectation? How are you placing yourself, and how much expectation are you putting into this trip?
Expectation is like 50-50% that I can tell. For example, the places that I visualize, that I think to go. So, for example, in Chitradurga, so the stop before the Hampi that we stop, and I read about before, and I had some I researched a bit. So I didn't think that it's really a big thing, but actually it's a real big thing when we go there, that fort, and it's absolutely amazing production.
Yeah, construction and engineering, and truly
So that expectation is beyond from
so,
what
right.
I thought, and some things, the places, something is so not meet my expectations. So, for example, some roads that in the beginning we start, so I trust that road could be good one, so actually it's not the good one. So something like that. But down the road, we decide that we don't expect things to be perfect. So we accept as it is when we see it. So that will be my answer.
Yeah, I agree. The best way to proceed is to try and curb your expectations, because that can really get you in trouble, especially when a situation arises where you are not, maybe you are right that a situation is not meeting a certain standard of expectations, right? And especially with the hotels, this tends to happen in some locations, which we kind of knew to expect that they were not going to be
Perfect.
up to a certain standard. And so we did have our share of issues that we had to deal with, but because we were prepared that we might experience, so that's a kind of positive type of expectation also, that you to some extent you make yourself aware that you should expect some things not to be up to a certain level. And then we approach those things with calmly. We resolved the issues. We made sure the room was ready for us to move in, and we knew we were only spending one night and it was going to be okay, and it was not going to be the end of the world, and we managed that very well. And then in Chitradurga, just exactly where you were talking,
completely opposite.
the next night we had an amazing experience. And what was the difference? What was the key difference, would you say, between the two situations? Who made that difference for us?
I think the person is the made the difference. Honestly, that in Jitudruga, that place, that is amazing hospitality and the way he treats us and the location and the hotel. And it's like a all-in-one piece. It's amazing.
And if we were to compare the two hotels in terms of just what it is supposed to be, same standard, right? Same standard for the hotel, supposed to be. About approximately same room size, same bed size, both are promising air conditioning, water, and so on. In reality, the situation is not exactly up to that level on one end, the previous stop, but the person and the people who made our simple stay really beyond our expectations, simply because they took the time to pay attention to our small requests, and they were just lovely to interact with, and just very kind and welcoming people, and who are running their own business and who are on side of their business. So that's really what makes a huge difference. So in the end, when it comes to this psychology of the road, it really is about the interactions with the people that we come into contact with. And most of it is unexpected because, yes, we know we will meet people, but we don't know
what kind of people
we will meet. And what would you say, in a percentage, have we been mostly blessed with good people?
Yes, 95%, because we are in good mood, I mean in the positive side, so we may meet that vibe.
That type of positive people as well. Okay, I think that we will conclude our little interview about so far how our road is going, and we thank you for joining us for this little session, and hopefully we'll get to meet you again and have a little chat at a later time in our journey. Ayuban.
Ayuban.